During the 68th Montana Grain Growers Association annual convention in Great Falls, Montana, producers from far and wide gathered in the Big Sky State to discuss all things farming, but also hear from the industry leaders that help shape a future for the farming industry out in the countryside. And one of those individuals is South Dakota native, Mr. Zach Ducheneaux, Farm Service Agency Administrator. And Mr. Ducheneaux, as we sit here today, it's been a busy fall for you, traveling the countryside, watching closely the funding of the government as well for your agency. But overall, I guess, what has it been like in the fall of 2023 meeting, not only with crop producers, but livestock producers who have seen quite a lot over the last few years?
We've had the good fortune to deliver a lot of resources where they're needed in the crop and the livestock segment. This administration has done a lot of work in ensuring that there is more parity in the livestock program. So many of our producers in Montana, the Great Plains, all across the country where they're handling livestock have reaped the benefit of these programs. The crop growers right now are really thinking about 2022 and the recovery that they're trying to bring about from the disasters of 2022. We have the ERP 2022 program, which is the next iteration of ERP from 2020 and 21. And what we've done is take the lessons that we learned from delivery of that program during those 2 years, heard stakeholder feedback, and rolled out this program so that we're going to do both tracks at the same time. It's important to note for the viewers that when we were asked what we estimated the need for this program to be for 2022, we said it was going to be $10 billion. Congress was able to find $3 billion to let us run this program, and we're glad to have it, and we're going to do our best to get it out. But in delivering a program that we know from the beginning is going to be oversubscribed, we've got to try to find a way to make sure that we're getting the most return for the taxpayers. And this administration has been very vocal about working from the bottom up and the middle out. And the secretary has talked about the ag of the many, not the ag of the few. So we took a look at the available resources, took a look at the demand, 210,000 applications. The way we have set up this progressive factoring, 82% of the producers that are going to receive a payment are going to receive an added payment over what they would have if we just did a flat factor. So we're really proud of that approach, and we think it very closely aligns with the values that rural America believes in. Keeping folks out there on these farms, keeping folks in these rural communities, keeping that next generation engaged. So the way we've done that has caused some concern for the folks that are in the 18%, because there are folks that didn't receive that flat factor in their payment. And what we ask is, think about 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when you were one of those folks that's receiving a little extra benefit here. What path would that have put you on? What trajectory could you have been on? Would you be buying the land that you're now renting? Would you have resources? Would you not be borrowing the money to operate now? If we can help folks change course sooner, maybe we can get to that reality where more of our producers are operating from a cash reserve as opposed to depending on how much they can borrow for the next year. Because what I shared with the crowd here is, to me, the best risk management tool is about 2 years worth of operating capital sitting in a bank somewhere. And not many of our producers live in that reality. I don't know any.
Yeah, I would like to see that percentage on there too. And, there could be viewers right now and listeners wondering, they may classify some of these programs as a government handout or maybe a taxation on them. And I guess, how do you maybe look at that differently? I know what you address that more as an investment when you talked about an investment in rural America with the audience here. But when you have that engagement, whether it's just a taxpayer that's a consumer, or maybe it's a producer out in the countryside that gives you a call on your cell phone, I guess, how do you engage that? What's your response?
Well, we've got to share with them the rationale behind the decisions. We've all seen federal programs roll out, and they're not really been a spokesperson to explain why. And we're proud of the work we're doing, and we believe in the values that we're bringing to this important work. So when we share that with producers, I just talked to a gentleman from Kansas today, and he had concerns about the payment he was going to receive. And when I shared with him what we're trying to do, he's, that doesn't help me, but I understand where you're coming from now, and I appreciate you taking the call. So we've got to be willing to talk about this. Acting Deputy Administrator for Farm Programs, John Burge, and I were just talking about how proud we are to be able to deliver programs in this way to really help those producers change course. And it's an investment. That's the thing. This isn't an expenditure of taxpayer dollars. It's an investment that will continue to pay a return in the long haul.
Well, I know in previous conversations, Administrator, it's opened my eyes just to so much of the time when we talk about operating loans or farm loans through FSA.
Yeah.
I've in the past had that thought process. This is just for beginning farmers and ranchers. And I've learned talking with you and other FSA officials that's really not the case. So I guess when we look at farm loans from your administration's perspective, how vital are they, and why should producers that aren't just beginning producers, but experienced producers alike really go to those local USDA service centers and sit down with the FSA experts and look at them, explore them, and follow them if they're going to work, but just be better educated about them?
I think it helps to understand the approach and why our staff are taking the approach they're taking. Our statute authorizes us to provide credit where credit elsewhere isn't sufficient to meet the actual needs of the producer. And too much emphasis is given to the credit elsewhere part. And that puts us in a position where oftentimes we will send a producer to a bank, regardless of what the type of credit they're getting is. If you can get it there, go get it there. When what we really should be doing is taking advantage of the opportunity and the tools that we have to position that producer to be a depositor in a bank. That's the best way to make someone bankable. It isn't condemning them to a life of only operating from borrowed money. So we can use our tools to help producers get there, and not just young and beginning. And you don't have to get turned down by a bank to come into our office and have this conversation. That's the real takeaway.
And that was going to be my next question, because at the coffee shop, you always hear that, well, you got to be turned down by the bank before you go to FSA. And was that the case in the past, or has that just always been maybe a rumor out in the countryside?
It has been relaxed significantly in recent times, but it was the case in the past. But really it comes back down to a misinterpretation in my mind of that statute. It says the producer must demonstrate to the secretary in writing that they cannot obtain sufficient credit elsewhere to meet their actual needs at reasonable rates and terms. To me, that implies a comparison. So we should take a look at what a bank can offer, and then take a look at what we can offer, and make a decision with the producer about whether they want to jump into our program or work with a lender. But there's also a part of this about educating our producers to understand that our lenders can take some of these same steps in our guarantee program, where 90 to 95% of their risk is taken off the table, and it helps them navigate their loan limits. But too often our producers don't realize that they can shift that power dynamic by having a fallback position of the FSA that is going to accommodate their actual needs.
And obviously 2 weeks ago, we saw a continuing resolution to keep the government funding, and also an extension of that 2018 Farm Bill. But folks may be asking, is there funding available for these loans currently with that extension, or do we have to wait until the fiscal year spending is actually approved? I guess clear that up for us if you can.
Typically in our continuing resolutions, you get a straight line allocation of money. The first one, I think, was a 45-day period of time, got us to November 17th. So we got that proportion of what we would normally use to make loans. It's actually creating a challenge for us right now, because we got a small amount of emergency loan appropriation, and we've got way more demand for that program than we've got resources now. So the continuing resolution that we got to get us to January was the same. We've got a proportionate allocation of our resources. In the past, occasionally we have gotten the full year resource in a continuing resolution, but these have been what they call a clean resolution. And it's not necessarily tied to the Farm Bill. The Farm Bill authorizes the program. Congress appropriates the money we need to support the Farm Bill programs.
Well, thanks for clarifying that, because I know there's probably a lot of folks, including myself, that I'm glad I asked the question as
Yeah.
a farm broadcaster, but just cleared that up for them in the countryside. But also, we're at the Montana Grain Growers Convention. We're talking about wheat, barley, those pulse crops, canola, but also there's a lot for livestock producers, and whether that's the Livestock Indemnity Program or ELAP, which is way too long of a title for me to fit into my mouth right now. I know it has honeybees and livestock in there, but for our livestock producers that are watching here, well, let's just talk about some of those risk management programs that are there for them that traditionally have not been
Yeah.
there. So maybe these producers that would write off FSA or some of these programs when disaster or hard times have struck, they don't think about it.
We've been really fortunate having the support of the Secretary to try to bring some parity to these safety net programs. ELAP, LFP, LIP, NAP, all of the programs that our livestock producers kind of rely on are a valuable tool because Congress has given us a lot of discretion in how we deliver the programs. Because of that, we've been able to find a lot of flexibility in ELAP that has always been there, but we hadn't had the right perspective in the department to be able to leverage it into better benefits for the producers. Of course, you'll recall we talked early on in the administration that started with the producers in North Dakota who were in danger of having to lose their herds because feed was too far away and too expensive. That's why we talk about the investment, because a small investment in helping them haul that feed in helped keep that cow herd together, and now they're realizing record feeder calf prices. Had we not done that, we would have lost farms forever. So it's important to do these things to keep these farmers farming, build that safety net, and continue to promote that bottom-up, middle-out approach.
Obviously, you've been in the role for three years now, and I guess growing up in South Dakota, growing up in agriculture, I guess what has been the best aspect of being in this position, being out on the road, meeting with the producers, but also being an open ear as well? Because that's one thing. Everywhere you speak, you give out your contact information. Not a lot of government officials do that. It's usually the front office phone number. But I guess overall, what has your experience been like?
You know, I've really enjoyed it, and some of the most enjoyable experiences I've had all across the country, from onion fields in New York to walnut pastures in California, getting with the producers, seeing that interaction between our county office and them, and seeing the value in that relationship and the admiration and respect that those producers have for our offices in the field has really been moving for me. I'm a lifelong public servant and I come from a family of them. So I really take it seriously, and it really offends me when some folks bash federal employees and civil servants. So what I want to do is continue to advocate for that and let folks know everybody loves their county office, and we've got to push back on the narrative that they're not efficient and they're not dedicated. Some of the hardest working folks I've seen.
Well, and I'd actually like you probably don't have it, but a large majority of our county offices here in our region, most of them are on a ranch.
Yeah.
You know, that's that second source of
Yeah.
income. I see that a lot in our local USDA service centers.
And that's one of the challenges that we're trying to overcome by talking about USDA as an investment. The money that we pay our county staff is an investment as well, and we don't get enough to invest there. So oftentimes we see attrition in those county offices because the private sector may offer them a higher rate of pay. And it puts us in the unfortunate position of exploiting their passion for the work. In times past, when we were growing up, folks wanted to have that federal job because the benefits, the salary were commensurate. It was sought after and it was respected. The discourse in the country has changed. They're not respected positions anymore, except by the folks that they're actually serving. So we really hope to change that paradigm.
Well, I'm glad you got back to South Dakota for Thanksgiving, you said. So, did you have turkey or beef?
We had prime rib at my house.
Perfect. Well, I
No
like to
offense to my
substitute
friends
that,
in the
yeah.
poultry industry.
Well, I know a lot of producers out there appreciate seeing a cowboy hat out in the field, even if it's an onion field in New York.
That's right, yeah.
But again, for our friends joining us here today, we appreciate Mr. Zach Ducheneaux joining us here once again from the Montana Grain Growers Convention, and safe travels down to Fort Worth for the U.S. Cattlemen's Association meeting.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, friends, thanks for joining us here for this report from the Montana Grain Growers Convention. Our coverage brought to you by Torgerson's this week as well. For more of our conversations on the road, for not only at the grain growers, but for the last several weeks as we cover all the events out in the countryside. Make sure and follow all of our Western Ag Network social media channels and, of course, westernagnetwork.com. Have a great day, everyone.